The heart-stopping moment a cruise ship hit an iceberg has been caught on camera by terrified passengers.
People jumping overboard, fights breaking out, and chairs flying in stormy conditions. These are the last things you'd expect on a peaceful cruise vacation. But for many, that's the reality. What starts as a relaxing sightseeing journey with loved ones can quickly turn into a thrilling, adrenaline-fueled adventure filled with unexpected twists and turns. Get ready, because we're about to dive into 20 strange things spotted by cruise ship passengers that will have you gripping the edge of your lounge chair. Number 20. Glow-in-the-dark creatures. There's a great amount of onboard entertainment on the average cruise ship, but sometimes nature likes to put on its own show. In 2021, passengers sailing through the Pacific side of Colombia were treated to a beautiful glow-in-the-dark show with bioluminescent plankton. Typically, plankton produce this bioluminescence when disturbed, and a ship is definitely what you would call a disturbance in the water. It was an incredible sight, almost like someone had installed LED lighting beneath the water. Guests were blown away by how vibrant blue the water looked in the dead of night. Many different sea creatures produce bioluminescence, such as fish, crustaceans, algae, and squid, to lure mates, attract prey, or confuse predators. I would say in this case they were trying to confuse one big giant cruise ship predator. Many examples of bioluminescence have been seen around the world, particularly in Australia, but you don't have to be on a cruise ship to see it. Many people have been fortunate enough to see beautiful blue bioluminescence right on the shoreline of their local beaches. Number 19. Woman found after 2 years. A great deal of confusion surrounds how a woman went missing for 2 years and ended up in the ocean, but for the fishermen who found her, it was a wonderful day. After all, they saved a life. Fisherman Rolando Visbal and his friend were fishing near Puerto Colombia at around 6 a.m. one Saturday in 2020, when they saw what they thought was a log in the water. Rolando's friend told him to avoid the trunk, and they turned their vessel 15 degrees to the right. Much to their shock, the trunk moved. They soon realized it wasn't a tree trunk at all. It was a woman who seemed to be unconscious in the water. They pulled her aboard and learned that she had been in the water for 8 hours, drifting in and out of consciousness while sharks circled her. Her time was running out, but by a stroke of luck, the fishermen arrived just in time to save her life. According to Rolando, they would never have been there if it hadn't been for engine trouble they had the day before, which delayed their trip. Later conversations revealed the woman had escaped a domestic violence situation with her partner 2 years earlier, but these claims were disputed by her family. We may never know the full truth, but we at least know that she had another chance at life thanks to those 2 men. Number 18. Cargo ship hits historic mansion. A shipping company was likely in a lot of trouble after a mechanical problem caused its vessel to crash into an 18th-century historic waterfront mansion on the Bosphorus Strait in Turkey in 2018. The Malta-registered cargo ship was on its way to Egypt from Ukraine, traveling through the Bosphorus Strait, when its rudder failed. Without any control, the crew could do nothing but watch as the ship drifted toward the mansion and crashed right into it. While no injuries were reported, the building suffered horrendous damage. Even though 50,000 vessels pass through that strait every year, it's considered one of the riskiest waterways in the world. Some experts believe a canal needs to be dug from the Black Sea to the Sea of Marmara. This would reduce shipping traffic through this waterway and hopefully prevent something like this from happening again. Number 17. Ship crashes into harbor. A tall ship called the Oliver Hazard Perry kind of lived up to its middle name, Hazard, in 2019 after trying to depart the harbor following a seafood festival. Its 2 propellers got caught up in a dock line, causing it to lose power. This loss of power caused the Oliver Hazard Perry to strike 4 boats at Newport Harbor in Rhode Island. It had been trying to make its way back to its permanent berth at Fort Adams State Park when all this drama went down. According to the U.S. Coast Guard, it grounded near Parati Park and blocked a channel regularly used by cruise ships to get passengers to Newport. It remained there until the next day, when tugboats finally helped it make the journey back to Fort Adams. According to the Oliver Hazard Perry Facebook page, the ship didn't run aground as the U.S. Coast Guard said it had. It also stated that there were no injuries and only minor damage to the boats that it collided with. Number 16. Ship in distress in Antarctica. If you get motion sick just looking at a boat moving through the waves, you'd be spending your entire journey aboard Clelia 2 in the bathroom. The Antarctic cruise ship was at the mercy of the ocean after experiencing an electrical failure during stormy seas and 55 miles per hour winds in 2010. Bad weather in the Drake Passage of Antarctica caused 30-foot waves to crash against the cruise ship, which makes my stomach turn just thinking about it. When a particularly violent wave hit the vessel, it broke the starboard window and damaged the electrics. Clelia 2 temporarily lost engine performance and communications, leaving the ship to be knocked around by the raging oceans until it could be fixed. Fortunately, the 100 passengers and 60 crew members weren't alone in their traumatic experience. The National Geographic Explorer stayed with Clelia 2 until it was able to make its return journey to Argentina, 2 days behind schedule. I don't know what's worse, dealing with all that nausea and vomiting with 100 other people or being isolated in the middle of the Antarctic. Apparently, tourism to the ends of the earth is a thing, but you can count me out if that's what they encounter. Number 15. Chairs go flying in a storm. You'd probably be questioning your decision to go on a cruise if, just as you boarded, a massive storm sent everything flying. Passengers had just boarded Royal Caribbean's Independence of the Seas in Cape Canaveral, Florida, when shocking hurricane-like winds hit the ship. Loungers and tables went flying across the deck, and guests had to run for cover to avoid being hit by flying items. One woman, carrying a small child, narrowly avoided being hit by a lounger. It instead hit her empty stroller. Oh my God! I, for one, would be grabbing my bags and making for the exit. That's a no from me. Fortunately for the guests, no one was seriously injured in the strange weather event, and it was over before it truly began. A Royal Caribbean spokesperson said the storm didn't last for long, and they were able to make their way to the Bahamas on schedule. Number 14. Great white shark sighting. While not technically a cruise ship sighting, we believe you won't be too disappointed by this story. Greg Scommel from the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy was out on a boat off the Cape Cod National Seashore when he had a much closer interaction with a great white shark than he perhaps wanted to. He was standing out on a pulpit with a camera attached to a large pole, trying to capture footage of great white sharks when he definitely did capture the footage he was looking for. Oh holy! A great white shark leapt out of the water right underneath him. If that pulpit wasn't as strong as it was, he would have likely become mincemeat. It seems as though the shark was attracted to the pole or possibly his black boots that looked like small seals. Whatever the reason, he probably had to change his pants after that scary encounter. But at least his experience didn't lead to an actual attack. That's not the case for all great white shark interactions. While there are hundreds of shark species, great whites are responsible for the largest number of fatal unprovoked attacks. Number 13. Carnival cruise ships collide. Parking a huge cruise ship is much harder than parking a car. Not only do you have this giant structure to handle, but you also have to deal with unpredictable waves and winds. That's perhaps what resulted in Carnival Glory hitting Carnival Legend when it tried to maneuver into a dock in Cozumel, Mexico, in 2019. Multiple videos taken by passengers showed Carnival Glory taking out multiple windows at the rear of Carnival Legend. According to Carnival, 6 people sought medical treatment for injuries related to the collision. The damage wasn't deemed to affect either ship's seaworthiness, so guests could enjoy their day ashore at Cozumel, knowing the rest of their cruise wouldn't be affected. Fortunately for the guests, the cruise was coming to an end anyway. Both ships were on the final leg of a 7-day Western Caribbean cruise, with Carnival Glory headed back to New Orleans and Carnival Legend on its way to Tampa. After the awful collision, Carnival said they would investigate what happened but believed strong winds and currents were factors. Number 12. Cruise ship caught in cyclone. If you've ever been motion sick, you know how awful it is. If you're in a car, you can just pull over, rest, and wait until you feel better before heading off again. But if you're on a cruise ship, you can't. So imagine how awful it would feel to be on a cruise ship traveling through a winter storm of historic proportions with no way of experiencing relief. You just had to endure the constant nausea and vomiting until you arrived on dry land. Passengers aboard the Norwegian breakaway cruise ship in 2017 had this awful experience. The worst part is that it was entirely avoidable. Norwegian Cruise Line knew the forecasts in advance and still chose to take their passengers through the middle of a fierce winter storm that saw hurricane-force winds of 75+ miles per hour. It was a winter storm of historic proportions that lasted multiple days. Both passengers and crew spent most of their time on the cruise ship just trying to stay upright. The oceans were so rough that people were being thrown out of their beds. Some people chose to sleep in public spaces or gave up on sleeping altogether, and the seasickness was the worst many had ever experienced. While crew members were handing out seasickness remedies, it was a 20-minute wait just to get a single dose. After the guests finally made it back to New York, preparations were being made for a class action lawsuit. Number 11. dolphins put on a show. Passengers aboard an Ionian Cruises ship traveling from Paxos Island to Corfu were treated to free entertainment on their travels. As they made their way to their next location, dolphins followed the cruise ship and put on quite a show. They managed to keep up with the cruise ship, swimming in and out of the water, much to the delight of the passengers. But as it turns out, they weren't the only cruise ship passengers treated to such a fantastic display. Passengers aboard MS Fram, traveling from Africa to Brazil, also saw dolphins jumping in and out of the water, seeming to chase the cruise ship as it made its way through the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. There were at least a dozen dolphins moving in and out of the water, trying to keep pace with the cruise ship. It's almost like they were friendly. To be fair, researchers think that wild dolphins are friendly to a degree. They have large brains and show compassion toward humans, and dolphins seem to think that humans are part of their pod. However, it definitely depends on the species. Some are friendly toward humans, while others don't like humans at all. Bottlenose dolphins, short-beaked common dolphins, and Atlantic spotted dolphins tend to be friendlier than most. These are the dolphin species that would typically happily interact with cruise ships and passengers if given the chance. Number 10. Waveset Car Alarms. Washington State Ferry operates year-round, multiple times daily. It takes passengers and their vehicles to and from the 4 main islands, San Juan, Shaw, Orcas, and Lopez. Most passengers enjoy a pleasant journey, but that's not the case for everyone. If you happen to be traveling in stormy weather, spare a thought for your poor vehicle being exposed to the elements. Passengers witnessed massive waves crashing onto cars on the ferry's deck. Some of those waves were so fierce that they pushed the vehicles back and set off their alarms. Given that wind speeds reached up to 66 miles per hour, that's probably not surprising. If your vehicle is your pride and joy, you could do nothing more than pretend the saltwater wasn't getting into every nook and cranny. I'd be taking the ferry without my vehicle if it were me. Number 9. Large cruise liner crashes. You expect to go on a relaxing cruise vacation with no drama, but drama was exactly what passengers got on one of the longest cruise liners in the world. Harmony of the Seas, owned by Royal Caribbean, was arriving in Falmouth, Jamaica, when it announced its arrival to guests in the worst possible way, by smashing into the jetty. Alongside the crunching of the dock's concrete against the vessel's stern, guests could also be heard screaming. Yeah, not exactly a pleasant way to arrive at your destination, is it? The incident happened in 2022 when Harmony of the Seas was trying to reverse into its designated spot at the dock. Rather than entering gracefully, it approached at an odd angle and scraped along the dock's concrete. Fortunately, the damages were only superficial, and there were no reports of injuries among guests or the crew. But you can almost guarantee that whoever was reversing that giant vessel would be in a world of trouble. In saying that, I wouldn't imagine parking a huge cruise ship would be easy. Harmony of the Seas is one of the largest cruise ships in the world at 1,188 feet long. That's longer than the Eiffel Tower is high. Many of us can't even reverse out of our own driveways without hitting the mailbox, so we should probably give this ship captain a break. Number 8. Woman jumps off cruise ship. Many bad things can happen on cruise ships, like food poisoning outbreaks, but the most awful thing that can ever happen is someone going overboard and not being found. Many guests witnessed that very event aboard Carnival Valor in 2022. A 32-year-old woman was on a 5-day cruise to Mexico from New Orleans with her husband when security had to remove her from a hot tub for an unknown reason. She was upset and fighting with security, who had to restrain her for being combative. 3 security guards attempted to escort her off the pool deck. Meanwhile, she was yelling out the name Alicia while being in obvious distress. Unfortunately, the woman managed to break free from security and jumped off the 10th floor of the ship. According to some witnesses, she hit a lifeboat on the side of the ship and hit the water face first, while her body jerked, almost like she was having a seizure from hitting the lifeboat. Ship crew raced to the edge of the ship to throw life preservers into the water for her to grab onto. They also threw flares into the water to mark her position. The ship circled the area for several hours, but she couldn't be located. The Coast Guard took over and searched for 14 hours across more than 2,500 miles before suspending their search. From our research, it doesn't seem as though she was ever found. Number 7. Ship and tourist boat collide. Well, this isn't something you see every day. In 2019, the cruise ship MSC Opera was spotted colliding with the River Countess tourist boat and a dock in Venice. It lodged itself between the dock and boat, leaving 4 with bruises and 2 taken to the hospital. Many people stopped to video the crazy event, which showed people running away as fast as they could, thinking the ship would end up crashing through the walking area. The collision happened on the Giudecca Canal, a popular route leading to St. Mark's Square. According to some reports, the ship was trying to dock at a passenger terminal when it experienced mechanical issues. Out of all the times to have mechanical issues, when you're parking the vessel would have to be the worst time. 2 towboats had attempted to guide the cruise ship to stop it from hitting the tourist boat, but they were obviously unsuccessful. A tow cable was also broken during the collision. The captain of MSC Opera couldn't do much because the cruise ship's engine was locked. Cruise ships are hugely popular, but Venice locals are fed up with them. After this accident, locals were trying to get them banned from the Italian city. Number 6. Waves crash through ferry windows. You typically feel quite safe on ferries. They're made to handle some pretty harsh weather conditions. But it was 1 point for Storm Elena and 0 points for the ship Tolerort in 2022. That was when a massive wave smashed right through the ferry window, sending passengers running for their lives. One passenger had been recording the massive waves at the front of the ferry when they happened to capture the very moment a huge wave broke through. At first, not everyone realized that the window had broken, but as the water started rushing in, everyone grabbed their possessions and scampered. Tolerort was traveling along Route 62 between Hamburg and Finkenwerder when it encountered the worst of the storm. Fortunately, a company spokesperson said no one was seriously injured. Another news outlet reported that 1 person received minor injuries. Now, to be fair, it wasn't just ferry passengers who experienced the worst of that storm. Wind speeds were a whopping 94 miles an hour, and everyone was being told to stay indoors, not drive, and stay away from trees and power lines. Why you'd get on a ferry in such conditions is beyond me. Number 5. 11th floor deck jump. Imagine looking out your cabin window on a cruise ship to see a man casually speeding past your window. You might think he'd been pushed. After all, who volunteers to jump from the 11th deck of a cruise ship? Well, Nick Nadev of Vancouver, Washington, did. The 27-year-old was with his friends on Royal Caribbean's Symphony of the Seas cruise ship in Nassau, Bahamas, when he decided to go for a dip in the water. But rather than wait until they made it to dry land to enter the water like, a regular person, he decided to leap into the shark-infested waters from his 11th floor room balcony. It's a long way down, but that didn't seem to bother Nick, who jumped without a second thought. When asked whether he had any thoughts when he jumped, he said he didn't. Nick said that if he had thought about what he was doing, he probably would have stepped back, like any sane person. He simply woke up one morning, saw his friends on the balcony, and told them he was going to jump. They cheered him on, so that's what he did. That's definitely giving off, if your friends jumped off a bridge vibes. His dive into the waters below might have thrilled his friends, but Royal Caribbean sure wasn't happy about it. They said it was stupid and reckless, and Nick and his friends were banned from sailing with them in the future. They even said they were exploring legal action. Number 4. Woman rescued after going overboard. Very rarely are people rescued alive after falling or jumping from cruise ships. Fortunately, an incident aboard Royal Caribbean's Mariner of the Seas had a different outcome. After an Oscar alert blared across the cruise ship's sound system, it was all hands on deck to rescue a 42-year-old woman who had fallen from the 10th deck of the cruise ship. The ship was southeast of the Dominican Republic when the woman went overboard. The cruise ship quickly performed a 180-degree turn, while the crew reported the incident to local authorities. They then launched an immediate search for her. 2 empty life rings were floating in the water near a flare that had been set off to identify her location. But with the glaring sun and the expanse of the water, rescuers in a lifeboat were having a hard time finding her. But humans have this awesome tendency to band together when we need to. Other passengers stood on their balconies, and when they spotted the woman, they guided the rescuers to her location. According to Royal Caribbean, the woman was successfully recovered from the water alive and was brought back on board. Despite the fall from such a massive height, it's believed that she was in good health. Some passengers were a little confused though. Michigan man Matthew, a passenger on the ship, said it's impossible to fall off the boat with 4.5-foot high railings. We may never know what happened. Number 3. Cruise ship separates family. Cruise ship vacations aren't all about enjoying time on a big fancy cruise ship. You also dock in various ports and can explore many new destinations. But there's typically one main rule: be back on the ship before it's time to leave. One person broke that golden rule, and an entire family paid the price. The Norwegian breakaway had taken passengers on a week-long cruise through the Bahamas and Bermuda, leaving from and returning to New York City. It had stopped at the Nassau dock and was preparing to return to New York City. According to a passenger aboard the ship, the mother of a family unit with 2 children, aged between 9 and 12, had not returned at the required time. Oh my God. The ship employees told the father to look for her before the ship left. He couldn't find her, so the ship left without the parents. The 2 children were left on the vessel without their parents. Fortunately, they had their uncle, but you can't help but feel sorry for the couple, who were seen distraught and on their knees at the dock while watching the ship leave. Many passengers were shocked at how ship employees could make the call to leave the parents behind, but not everyone was sympathetic. Most passengers said the times to be back aboard are made clear. The ship employees also went above and beyond by waiting an additional half an hour and offered travel and lodging help to the couple left behind. They were also reunited with their children back in New York. Number 2. Container filled with goodies. Thousands of containers fall off ships each year. Have you ever wondered what happens to them? Sometimes people find them and get to keep the goodies within. Apparently, if you find a container at sea and it's considered abandoned, you're potentially not doing anything wrong by taking the content. But don't quote us on that. Maybe you know more. Share your thoughts in the comments. In this instance, fishermen aboard a vessel hit the jackpot when they encountered a shipping container in the ocean. They cut a hole in the side to reveal boxes and boxes and boxes of new iPhone 12s. They were a little rough retrieving the boxes, causing some to fall into the sea, but it seemed like there were plenty to go around. The employees were absolutely delighted when they saw all those brand new phones worth thousands of dollars. It's likely that the container fell off a cargo ship in bad weather, and the owners would have probably claimed insurance on it. Now it's time for today's topic. A man on a cruise ship captured something big rising out of the ocean, and you won't believe what everyone who saw the photo thinks it is. It looks like a giant UFO, almost like it had touched down in the calm ocean waters to plan its next move. All we have is this photo, but those who have seen it are convinced this isn't a regular ocean craft of this world. I mean, just look at how perfectly diamond-shaped it is. Do you think it really is a UFO? Number 1. Passenger hangs off ship. Cruise ships offer plenty of onboard entertainment, but teenagers can have other ideas about what entertainment is. For example, a daredevil teenager, who most people would describe as an idiot, decided it would be a great idea to hang off the side of a Carnival cruise ship as it departed from Galveston, Texas. First, he jumped over the ship's railings, being encouraged by his friends, before clambering down and holding on to the railing while his legs dangled over the side of the boat. But just being on the other side of the safety railing wasn't enough for the teen. He then climbed down further and hung onto the rail that extends past the dock. Finally, he pulled himself back up and climbed over the safety railing with the help of another boy. It's almost like he and other teenagers don't realize that they're not invincible. A simple change of wind direction or having a hand slip could have seen him sucked underneath the ship. One of the boys who witnessed the crazy stunt posted it online for the world to see. Your heart is in your mouth as you watch him in so much danger. Other cruise ship guests who witnessed what the teen did were horrified, and as you can imagine, so was Carnival. They released a statement promising to launch a probe when they became aware of the video. Cruise companies always make cruises seem like the perfect relaxing getaway, but I'm starting to think that's not always the case. I mean, imagine being caught in a storm or dealing with a collision. Talk about a nightmare. That would definitely be my first and last cruise. Have you ever been on one? What was your experience like? Any juicy stories to share? Be sure to check out our other cool content showing up on the screen right now. See you next time.